Respected woman, listen to me carefully, because what I am about to tell you may change the way you see this entire situation. You gave him your time, your loyalty, your heart, your patience, and your love, and then one day he disappeared like none of it ever mattered. But his silence does not mean you were not enough. Sometimes a person walks away from a blessing because they were never mature enough to carry it. I know that silence hurts. It is not just the unanswered message that hurts. It is the questions behind it. What did I do wrong? Why did he change? Why was I good enough yesterday but invisible today? Why could he tell me he cared and then disappear without even giving me an explanation? And the hardest question of all is this: how can somebody receive so much love from you and still walk away as if you meant nothing? But today, I want you to stop asking yourself that question. Because the moment you keep asking why someone who abandoned you did what they did, you give them control over your peace. You have to understand something about love. Giving someone everything does not guarantee that they will value everything. Your love can be genuine, your intentions can be pure, and your heart can be completely committed, but you cannot force another human being to have the emotional maturity to appreciate what you bring. You can show somebody loyalty and they can still choose temptation. You can give somebody honesty and they can still choose deception. You can give somebody your heart and they can still choose to walk away. And that does not automatically make your heart the problem. Sometimes the problem is that you were trying to build something with somebody who was only interested in enjoying what you provided. There is a difference between someone who loves what you give and someone who values who you are. Think about that. Some people love your attention. They love your messages. They love knowing you are waiting for them. They love the comfort you provide. They love having someone who believes in them when they do not even believe in themselves. But when it is time to give something back, when it is time to communicate, commit, sacrifice, and show consistency, suddenly they disappear. That is not love. That is convenience. And sometimes the greatest mistake you can make is confusing someone's dependence on you with their devotion to you. You thought he needed you because he kept coming back. You thought he valued you because he opened his heart to you. You thought there was something special because of the memories you created together. Maybe there was something special, but something being special does not mean it is supposed to last forever. Some relationships come into your life to teach you what you deserve, not to become your permanent destination. And I know that is difficult to accept when you are still emotionally attached, because your heart remembers the good moments. Your mind remembers his voice. You remember the nights you talked for hours. You remember the promises. You remember the way he looked at you. You remember the moments when he made you believe that maybe this was finally the person you had been waiting for. And now you are sitting there looking at your phone, wondering whether you should send another message. Don't. Not because you should play games, not because you need to manipulate him, not because you want revenge. Don't send that message because you need to start protecting the woman who has been giving too much of herself away. There comes a point where chasing an explanation becomes more damaging than accepting the silence. If somebody has the ability to disappear from your life without giving you basic respect and communication, their silence is already information. You don't need another paragraph. You don't need another apology. You don't need to beg someone to tell you why they stopped caring. You need to ask yourself a better question. Why am I still trying to convince somebody to recognize my value when I already know what I gave? That question changes everything. Because healing begins when you stop measuring your worth by somebody else's behavior. You were valuable before he met you. You were valuable while he loved you. And you are valuable now that he is gone. His attention did not create your worth, and his absence cannot destroy it. Listen to me. You cannot build your confidence around whether one person chooses you, because if they choose you, you feel powerful. If they leave, you feel worthless. That is an emotional prison. Your confidence has to come from knowing who you are when nobody is clapping for you, nobody is texting you, and nobody is telling you that you are beautiful. You have to be able to look in the mirror and say, I know what I bring to the table. I know how deeply I love. I know how loyal I am. I know how much I have grown. And if somebody does not recognize it, I am not going to spend the rest of my life standing at the door begging them to see it. Because sometimes rejection is not punishment. Sometimes rejection is protection. Maybe he ghosted you because he was never prepared for the kind of relationship you were trying to build. Maybe he disappeared because honesty required courage he did not have. Maybe he left because staying would have forced him to become accountable. Whatever the reason, do not turn his decision into a verdict against yourself. You are not rejected as a person. You are simply being redirected. And now you have a choice. You can spend the next 6 months checking his social media, rereading old messages, wondering who he is talking to, imagining him with somebody else, and asking yourself why she was chosen instead of you. Or you can decide that this pain is not going to be wasted. You can turn this heartbreak into discipline. You can turn this disappointment into self-respect. You can turn this lonely season into the season where you finally meet yourself again. Because the woman who comes out of heartbreak should not be the same woman who entered it. She should be wiser, stronger, calmer, more selective. And most importantly, she should know that love is not supposed to require her to abandon herself. So tonight, if you are tempted to send that message, put the phone down, take a breath, and remind yourself that you do not have to chase someone who already knows how to find you. If he wants to explain, he knows where you are. If he wants to apologize, he knows how to reach you. If he wants to repair what he broke, he knows what he broke. Your responsibility is not to drag him back. Your responsibility is to bring yourself back. Bring back your confidence. Bring back your peace. Bring back the woman who existed before she started measuring every day by whether a man called. Because when you finally understand that, something powerful happens. And you stop waiting for him to come back, and you start coming back to yourself. Now, let me tell you what happens when you stop chasing someone who ghosted you. At first, it feels uncomfortable because you are used to doing something. You are used to checking your phone, wondering if he has seen your message, looking at his last active status, checking whether he posted something, wondering if that picture was meant for you. Your mind keeps creating stories because your heart wants an ending. But sometimes there is no satisfying explanation. Sometimes the closure you are waiting for is never going to come from him. You have to create it yourself. And that is one of the hardest lessons in life. Closure is not always a conversation. Sometimes closure is accepting that someone's actions gave you an answer their words never could. He stopped communicating, he stopped showing up, he stopped making an effort. And instead of spending months trying to decode that behavior, you have to look at it for what it is, a choice, his choice. And now you have your own choice to make. You can continue knocking on a door that he intentionally closed, or you can turn around and walk toward a life where you don't have to beg anyone to open the door, because let me tell you something. The right person will not make you feel like you have to audition for your place in their life. You should not have to compete for basic communication. You should not have to wonder whether you matter. You should not have to become smaller, quieter, less emotional, less loving, or less yourself just to keep someone interested. Love should challenge you to grow, but it should never require you to disappear. And this is where many people make a mistake after being ghosted. They start blaming themselves. They say, maybe I texted too much. Maybe I cared too much. Maybe I was too available. Maybe I should have acted colder. Maybe I should have played hard to get. No, don't turn genuine love into something you have to apologize for. The problem was not that you cared. The problem was giving your care to someone who did not know how to handle it responsibly. There is nothing embarrassing about loving deeply. There is nothing weak about being loyal. There is nothing wrong with being vulnerable with someone you believed you could trust. But there is something dangerous about continuing to offer those qualities to someone who repeatedly proves they do not respect them. That is where the lesson is. You don't need to become cold, you need to become discerning. There is a difference. A cold heart says, I will never love again. A wise heart says, I will love again, but I will pay attention to actions. I will listen to consistency. I will watch how somebody treats me when things become inconvenient. I will notice whether their words match their behavior. I will stop falling in love with potential and start paying attention to reality. Because anybody can tell you they care. Anybody can make promises when everything feels good. Anybody can send you beautiful messages at midnight. But character is revealed when life becomes difficult. Character is revealed when communication requires effort. Character is revealed when temptation appears. Character is revealed when they have the opportunity to hurt you and choose not to. That's what you need to learn from this. Not how to become better at keeping him. How to become better at recognizing who deserves access to you. You gave him everything. Now give something to yourself. Give yourself the patience you gave him. Give yourself the forgiveness you gave him. Give yourself the understanding you gave him. You spent so much time asking, why couldn't he understand me? Start asking, why wasn't I understanding myself? Why did I ignore the moments that made me uncomfortable? Why did I explain away behavior that hurt me? Why did I accept inconsistency because I was afraid that setting a boundary might make him leave? And this question may hurt, but it can change your life. What did I tolerate because I was afraid of losing him? Because sometimes heartbreak isn't only about losing another person. Sometimes heartbreak reveals how much of yourself you lost while trying to keep them. Maybe you stopped doing the things you loved. Maybe your happiness became dependent on his attention. Maybe you started waking up every morning wondering what mood he was in. Maybe you started analyzing every word he said. Maybe you stopped trusting your own instincts because you wanted the relationship to work so badly. That is what you need to recover now. Yourself. Start small. Wake up and don't check his page. Go through your day without wondering whether he is thinking about you. Stop searching for signs. Stop asking mutual friends what he is doing. Stop trying to discover whether he has somebody else. Because every time you search for information about him, you reopen the wound. And you cannot heal a wound you keep touching. There is a beautiful life waiting for you outside of this obsession. You have dreams you haven't touched, places you haven't seen, people you haven't met, versions of yourself you haven't discovered. But you cannot meet the next version of yourself if you keep living in the emotional room where he left you. Walk out, not dramatically, not bitterly, peacefully. There is power in leaving without needing to prove anything. And here's something else you need to understand. If he comes back, that does not automatically mean he has changed. Missing you is not the same as being ready for you. Loneliness is not commitment. Regret is not transformation. A message saying, I miss you, is not evidence that someone has learned how to love you properly. So if he ever returns, don't listen only to what he says. Watch what he does. Does he take responsibility? Does he acknowledge the hurt he caused? Does he communicate consistently? Does he make an effort without you begging? Does he understand why his behavior damaged your trust? Because you should never accept someone's return simply because you were lonely. You accept a person's return only when their behavior gives you a reason to believe something has changed. And if nothing has changed, then you are not getting a second chance. You are getting a repeat. Remember that, a repeat. And you have already lived that chapter. You don't need to read it again just because you missed the characters. Sometimes the strongest thing you can say is nothing. Not silent treatment, not manipulation, not a strategy to make him chase, just peace. You are not silent because you want him to suffer. You are silent because you have finally stopped negotiating with disrespect. That's maturity, that's growth. And eventually something unexpected happens. The day comes when you realize you haven't checked your phone in hours. Then you realize you haven't thought about him all morning. Then you laugh about something without remembering that he used to make you laugh. Then you wake up one day and understand that the person you thought you could never live without became a chapter you survived. And when that day comes, you will understand why you had to let go. Not because he was worthless, not because the relationship meant nothing, but because your life was never supposed to end where his effort ended. Your story continues. And the next chapter has to be written by a woman who knows her worth, a woman who can love deeply without losing herself, a woman who can walk away without hatred, a woman who can forgive without reopening the door, a woman who understands that being chosen is beautiful, but choosing yourself is necessary. And that is where your power begins. Now you have to understand the final lesson. You cannot control whether somebody stays. You cannot control whether somebody changes. You cannot control whether somebody recognizes your value, but you can control what you do after they leave. And that is where your power has always been, because heartbreak will try to convince you that your future disappeared with that person. It didn't. Your future is still waiting for you. You may not see it today because pain has a way of making tomorrow look empty. When your heart is hurting, you remember yesterday more clearly than you imagine tomorrow. But tomorrow is still yours. And you have to start rebuilding it. Not to make him jealous. Not so that he sees what he lost. Not so that one day he comes back and realizes he made a mistake. Do it because you deserve a life that is bigger than the person who walked away from you. This is the moment where you stop asking, how do I make him regret losing me? And start asking, how do I make sure I never abandon myself again? Now, that's the real transformation. Because if you spend your healing trying to make him regret his decision, then he is still controlling your life. You are still waking up thinking about him. You are still choosing your clothes, hoping he sees you. You are still posting pictures, hoping he notices. You are still measuring your progress by his reaction. That's not freedom. That's another form of attachment. Real healing is when you don't care whether he notices. You become successful without needing him to know. You become beautiful without needing his validation. You become peaceful without needing his apology. You become happy without needing him to witness it. That is when you have truly moved on. And I want you to understand something else. There will be moments when you miss him. Don't panic when that happens. Missing someone does not mean you made the wrong decision. It means you are human. You can miss someone and still know they were not good for you. You can love someone and still refuse to return to them. You can remember beautiful memories without reopening a painful relationship. You don't have to hate him to move forward. Sometimes the healthiest thing you can say is, I loved you, but I love myself enough to let you go. Now that's strength. And there's another part of healing that nobody talks about. You have to forgive yourself. Forgive yourself for staying too long. Forgive yourself for believing the promises. Forgive yourself for ignoring the red flags. Forgive yourself for sending that extra message. Forgive yourself for hoping. You were not stupid for believing in someone. You were hopeful. You were not weak because you loved deeply. You were brave enough to be vulnerable. The lesson is not to become suspicious of everybody. The lesson is to become more aware. The next time someone enters your life, don't only ask yourself, do I like him? Ask yourself, do I like who I become around him? Do I feel peaceful? Do I feel respected? Do I feel safe expressing my feelings? Does his behavior make sense with his words? Does he bring consistency into my life? Because attraction can make you ignore things that peace would never tolerate. You don't need the person who gives you the biggest emotional high. You need the person who gives you emotional safety. You don't need someone who keeps you guessing. You need someone whose actions make their intentions clear. You don't need somebody who loves you only when it is convenient. You need somebody who understands that love is responsibility. And until that person arrives, don't settle for somebody simply because you are lonely. Loneliness is temporary. Choosing the wrong person can cost you years. Sometimes you have to sit alone long enough to remember that being alone is not the same as being unloved. There is a difference. You can be alone and still be whole. You can be single and still be happy. You can be rejected by one person and still be deeply valuable. You can be forgotten by someone and still be unforgettable to the people who truly know your heart. So don't allow one person's inability to love you properly to become the story you tell yourself about your entire life. Your story is bigger than this breakup. Your identity is bigger than this relationship. Your future is bigger than this disappointment. And one day you may look back and realize that getting ghosted was not the end of your love story. It was the beginning of your self-respect story. It taught you to stop chasing. It taught you to stop explaining. It taught you to stop accepting crumbs because you were hungry for affection. It taught you that attention is not commitment. It taught you that chemistry is not character. It taught you that words are beautiful, but consistency tells the truth. And perhaps the greatest lesson of all is this: you do not have to convince the right person to value you. The right person may not be perfect. They may make mistakes, they may disappoint you sometimes, but they will not repeatedly make you question whether you matter. They will communicate, they will repair, they will show up, they will understand that your heart is not a playground. And until you meet that person, become the person you have been waiting for. Become your own source of encouragement. Become your own safe place. Become the woman who keeps her promises to herself. If you said you were going to heal, heal. If you said you were going to stop checking this page, stop. If you said you were going to focus on your future, focus. If you said you were going to raise your standards, raise them. Because every time you keep a promise to yourself, you rebuild a piece of your confidence. And confidence is not something somebody gives you. Confidence is something you build through evidence. Every day you choose yourself, you give yourself evidence that you can trust yourself again. That's powerful. Because maybe the hardest part of this entire experience was not that he ghosted you. Maybe it was that you stopped trusting your own judgment. You started wondering whether your feelings were wrong, whether your expectations were too high, whether you were asking for too much. But wanting communication is not too much. Wanting respect is not too much. Wanting consistency is not too much. Wanting someone who actually shows up is not too much. You were simply asking the wrong person for the right things. And now you know better. So don't waste this pain. Use it. Let it sharpen you without making you bitter. Let it strengthen you without making you cold. Let it teach you without making you afraid to love again. Because one day somebody is going to meet you after you've healed, and they are going to experience a woman who knows how to love without losing herself. A woman who gives generously but has boundaries. A woman who forgives but does not forget the lessons. A woman who is soft but not easily manipulated. A woman who can walk away from anything that consistently steals her peace. And when that woman looks back at the version of herself who cried over the man who ghosted her, she won't be ashamed of her. She will thank her, because that broken woman survived. That confused woman kept going. That woman who thought she would never be happy again kept waking up. And eventually she became stronger than the pain that tried to define her. That's you. You are not finished. You are not forgotten. You are not behind. You are healing. And healing is not always beautiful. Sometimes healing looks like crying in silence. Sometimes it looks like deleting the message. Sometimes it looks like refusing to respond. Sometimes it looks like choosing peace even when your heart wants an explanation. But every time you choose yourself, you move one step closer to the life you deserve. So let him go. Not because he didn't matter. He mattered. The memories mattered. The love mattered. But your future matters more. And now it is time to stop standing at the door of the past, waiting for somebody who walked away to come back and validate the love you gave. You already know what you gave. You know how hard you tried. You know how deeply you cared. You know the sacrifices you made. You don't need him to confirm your heart was genuine. You need to honor it. And when you do, you will finally understand that losing someone who couldn't value you is painful, but losing yourself trying to keep them would have been far more expensive. So choose yourself now, quietly, completely, without revenge, without bitterness, without needing anybody to understand. Choose yourself because your life is still waiting. And now, before you leave this video, I want you to remember one thing. He may have ghosted you, but he did not erase you. He may have walked away, but he did not take your future with him. He may have refused to give you closure, But he does not get to decide how your story ends. You gave him your heart. You gave him your patience. You gave him chances. You gave him a version of yourself that was willing to believe in love, even when love felt uncertain. And maybe he did not appreciate it. Maybe he took it for granted. Maybe he disappeared because he did not have the courage to face what he had done. But don't let his inability to value you become your reason for undervaluing yourself. There will come a morning when you wake up and the first thought in your mind will not be him. There will come a day when you hear his name and your heart will not break. There will come a moment when you realize that you are no longer waiting for his message. And when that moment comes, don't look back with regret. Look back with gratitude, because the woman who was abandoned became the woman who learned how to stand on her own. The woman who was ignored learned how to listen to herself. The woman who was left behind learned that she was never behind at all. She was simply being redirected, so don't chase him, don't beg him, don't prove your worth. Don't compete with another woman. Don't spend your days trying to make him jealous. Build a life that does not require his attention to feel meaningful. Wake up, take care of yourself, work on your dreams, protect your peace, laugh again, love yourself again. And when love comes back into your life, don't give everything immediately just because someone makes you feel butterflies. Let them earn access. Let consistency speak. Let character reveal itself. Let time show you who they really are, because your heart is precious. And the next person who receives it should understand that they are not receiving something ordinary. They are receiving something that survived, something that cried and still loved, something that was broken and still chose not to become bitter, something that learned the difference between being wanted and being valued. And if he ever comes back, remember this: you don't owe him the old version of you. If he returns, let your standards answer before your emotions do. Don't ask, do I still love him? Ask, has he become someone I can trust? That's the question that matters, because love without trust becomes anxiety. Love without consistency becomes confusion. Love without respect becomes pain, and you have already learned what that pain feels like. You don't need another lesson, you need a new chapter. And so tonight, put your phone down. Stop waiting, stop checking, stop wondering. Take that energy you were using to chase an explanation and put it into rebuilding your life, because your greatest revenge is not making him miss you. Your greatest victory is becoming so whole that whether he misses you or not no longer matters. That's freedom, that's healing, that's self-respect. And one day you will understand that he didn't destroy your heart. He introduced you to the strength that was already inside it. So wipe your tears, lift your head, take your power back. You loved him. You gave him everything you knew how to give. And now give yourself the one thing you should never have to beg anyone for: peace. Because the right person will never require you to lose yourself just to keep them. And the moment you finally choose yourself, you stop asking who left you, and you start becoming the person you were always meant to be. Your story is not over. This heartbreak is not your ending. It is the chapter where you finally learn that sometimes losing someone is exactly how you find yourself. And when you find yourself again, don't let go. Not for anyone, never again.